Good morning. So happy Monday. Welcome back. I hope you guys had a great Easter vacation. So today and tomorrow, we're just going to review the stuff that we learned from science, kind of shake out those cobwebs that you got during break, because I know that always happens. Our little minds fill up with cobwebs and stuff, and then we got to shake them out, get them out of there so that we can relearn the stuff that we already learned. So this is our science review. Okay? So, first of all animals are divided into two groups. So, they're divided into vertebrates okay, and invertebrates. Okay? So vertebrate means to have a backbone, and invertebrate means to not have a backbone, because remember we talked about how in means not. Okay? So our vertebrates that we studied were cold-blooded and warm-blooded. Okay? So cold-blooded means that their body temperature is exactly the same as their surroundings. Whereas warm-blooded means that your body temperature is the same no matter where you are, okay, about the same. Because God created our circulatory system to warm our bodies, and all warm-blooded creatures are created that way. So their body is warmed by their blood and some other stuff that we'll talk about in a little bit. Actually, why don't we just talk about it right now? So when you get cold, you shiver, and that movement helps to warm up your body if you get too cold. If you get warm, you sweat, perspire, and then you cool off. So that's how people heat up and cool off. And remember, we talked about the blood vessels come up to the surface when you're too warm to help your blood cool off, and when you get too cold, the blood vessels sink further down into you so that it helps keep you warm. Okay? So we learned in our book that birds fluff up their feathers to stay warm. They also shiver like people do. And to cool off, they either go like in water, like the bird bath or something like that, or they actually pant, which I thought was super interesting when I looked it up. So they open their little beak and they pant. So if you see a bird like breathing quickly, that's because he's warm. Dogs pant to cool off as well. If they get too hot, they pant. But in order to warm up, they actually slow down their metabolism. That's how fast you are processing food. So they slow that down so they can warm themselves up, which I also thought was pretty interesting. Okay, so we studied cold-blooded. We studied three groups of cold-blooded animals. We studied fish. What does it mean to be a fish? We studied amphibians. What does it mean to be an amphibian? Oh, my hand and my brain are not working together. Let's try that again. I forgot a whole bunch of letters in the middle. There we go. All right. So amphibians and reptiles. Okay. So that was our unit 1. That's what we studied. In unit 2, we have begun to do warm-blooded animals, and you have looked at birds and mammals. Okay? And we're going to review what you learned about birds and mammals over the next 2 days. So today we're focusing on the birds. What does it mean to be a bird? How do you classify a bird species? It's not the same as what does it mean to be a bird. They're two very different things that we're going to look at today. Okay? So here are my little notes to help me remember what I wanted to tell you and not to forget some important things. So if you see me do this, which is not good, or do this, it's just to look and see if I've missed anything. Now, why don't we do this? We talked about that. When we present, we don't hide our face, right? It's not good presentation etiquette, okay? So that's why I said, ooh, that's bad. All right, so let's continue on. So when you present to me something, make sure I don't see this. Make sure I see you, okay? So some of you have lost points because you do this, all right? Okay. Here we go. So what does it mean to be a bird? Let's draw a line here, start here. So to be a bird, first of all, you're warm-blooded. You're a vertebrate. Okay? So those are two things it means to be a bird. You also breathe with lungs. Yes? You have 2 wings. Okay? You have feathers. And most fly, but not all. You don't have to fly to be considered a bird. But most birds do fly. Okay? I want to make sure I didn't forget anything. All right. So, cool things. First, we're going to talk about like general bird things. We're going to talk about their feathers, their wings, their nesting habits, and some very interesting things about them. Okay? Are you ready? All right. So, the bird's body actually makes an oil, and the oil is used to coat the feathers in order to make them waterproof. That also helps them so that when they're out in the rain, they don't lose too much body temperature, and it helps to keep them warmer. So when you see a bird like pecking at their feathers, what they're doing is they're actually moving the oil down their feathers to help them stay waterproof. So when it rains, they don't get all cold and wet and stuff, okay? That oil also helps them to fly, okay? All right, so birds have wings, 2 wings, one on each side, okay? And the wings help them to fly as well. It helps them to go into the sky. Not all birds' wings, though, are used for flying. So, like penguins don't fly, but penguins use their wings to help them swim. And ostriches don't fly, but ostriches use their wings to help them change direction as they're running. Ostriches can run really, really fast, and so they put out their wing to kind of make them move direction, okay? Their bones also help them to fly. Their bones, remember we've talked about this, are hollow, and so it makes them lighter so that they are able to fly. All right? God created them incredible. Oils and wings and feathers and hollow bones. It's just really amazing how God made birds to fly. So when man first started trying to fly, they would look at the bird and they'd say, oh, look, they have wings. And so they would like make wings on their arms, and then they would try to fly like a bird. But that's not the only thing that allows birds to fly. So of course man would crash to the ground when he tried to fly because he was trying to imitate the bird, not realizing about the feathers and the oil and the hollow bones and all those other things that go into flying. The ostrich is the largest bird that there is. Emus are about the same size as well. I've already done this. Okay, so a lot of birds flap their wings to fly, but bigger birds, if you've ever watched like a hawk or an eagle, they actually do something called soaring. So they fly to get to a certain height, and then they just extend out their wings and they're just there and they're just soaring. Because what's happening is, though, remember we talked about how warm air rises? So those warm air from the earth is rising and creates something called air currents. And those air currents are what they're soaring on. And so they like hardly ever have to flap their wings once they get up there. You might see them for a really long time just soaring, and all of a sudden you see one flap. And then they'll just soar and soar, okay? So different birds use the wings that God gave them in a different way. Hummingbirds are the only bird that can like hover. So all birds, as they flap their wings, if you watch birds, and you know, what else are you doing right now? You can look outside and see if you can see any birds, and you'll see most of them flapping their wings. And as they flap their wings, they're moving, right? But hummingbirds are unique. They can flap their wings, and they flap them very fast, so fast you can't even see them, but they can hover. They can just stay in one place. That's what hover means. They can just hang out in one place. They can flap their wings as hard as they can. They can just hang out and like not move and go, ooh, I'm so happy right here. And then if they want to move, then they can. But that's the only bird God created that can hover and not have to fly around every time he's whipping his wings. Okay? All right, feathers. A feather, I don't know if you guys have ever had a feather in your hand. If we were at school, you would, because I have like, I don't know, 30 or 40 feathers or something that people gave me from like their chickens and their peacocks and stuff that they had pets. And so people gave me feathers, or feathers I just like found on the ground and stuff. So I have a bunch of different feathers, and all of the feathers are made out of a material called keratin. Now look at your hands, look at your cute fingernails. That's keratin too. Okay, grab your hair. Ooh, look at your hair. That's keratin too. So the same thing that wings are made out of is the same thing that God created for your fingernails and your hair. I thought that was pretty interesting. It's also the same material that claws are made out of, okay, and hooves and fur. Okay, it's all the same chemical kind of compound thing. All right, keratin. So let's see. There are different types of feathers. So different feathers are formed differently, like they're shaped differently, depending on what their job is. Different feathers have different jobs. Did you know that? Not all the feathers on the bird are made for the bird to fly. He actually has flying feathers. Not all the feathers on the bird are for him to be warm. He actually has feathers that are designed just to keep him warm. Okay? He also has feathers that are designed as sensors, so they can sense things going on around them. Kind of like when we feel breezes and things, or little bugs crawling on us. Our skin gives us sensory information, and birds actually have feathers that do that same sort of thing. Depending on the bird, did you know a bird has between 1,000 and 25,000 feathers? Depends on the bird species, the size of the bird, obviously, and all those kinds of things. But 25,000 feathers? That is amazing. So these feathers, they get kind of old and kind of like broken from the wind and stuff. So what God created in birds is something called molting. Okay, I'm going to write that. Molting. So molting is just a fancy word that when something gets old, it goes away and new comes. So birds molt 1 to 2 times a year. Depending on the species, their body actually has this whole system on which feathers go first, which feathers go last, how many feathers go at a time. So God really created in them this really neat system so that they don't lose all their feathers, because then they would be there and they couldn't fly because all their feathers are gone. Their flying feathers and their warming feathers, all their feathers are gone. And so any predator could come in and grab that bird. So God made sure that that doesn't happen. So they molt at a different feathers, different times, how many feathers, all that is already predetermined, which is pretty amazing. God even thinks about that kind of stuff. How many feathers? Okay? I think it's amazing. All right. All right, so now let's talk about how to identify species, okay? This is what every single bird has to have in order to be a bird, okay? When you're talking about species, you are talking about the kinds of birds. Like you have bluebirds. You have blue jays, which are different. Okay, you have robins, cardinals, chickadees, crows, eagles, hawks, ducks. Okay, so there's a lot of different kinds of birds. The kinds of birds are called species. Okay, so we're going to talk about the 3 things you can use. It's only 3. Some of you had way more than 3. 3 things that you can use to figure out, hey, what kind of bird is that? Is that a blackbird? Is that a crow? Is that a raven? Is that a mockingbird? What kind of bird is that? Is that a pigeon? We have a lot of pigeons at school, right? All right, so the 3 things are color, size, and sound. See, the book changed it. It used to be color, size, and song. Now it's color, size, and sound. Okay? So the 3 things you can use to identify what kind of bird it is to look at their coloring. Okay? I'll tell you what, a cardinal is not the same coloring as a blue jay, which is not the same coloring as a crow, which is not the same coloring as a screech owl, okay? So color can give you an idea of what kind of bird it could be. Size can give you an idea of what kind of bird it can be. An ostrich is a huge giant bird. You're never going to confuse that with a tiny hummingbird that fits in your hand. An ostrich is bigger than a grown man. He's taller, he weighs more, but yet a hummingbird you can fit in your hand, right in the palm there, okay? So there's size differences, and their song, what they say, okay? A chickadee gets his name because he says a chickadee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, okay? But there's other issues with their sound too. Birds have different sounds depending on if they feel they're in danger. Okay? Some birds have a song that they sing when it's gonna rain. They can like tell the weather and say, oh, it's raining, it's raining. Okay? So you not only need to know what sound your bird makes, but you need to know what are their other sounds. The chickadee has a different sound if he feels he's in danger. It's like warning. It's like he's saying, look out, we're in danger, look out, okay? But his regular song that he just likes to sing when he's hanging out on the tree branch and feeling fine and looking at the sun is chickadee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, okay? So those are some things that help you to determine about the animal, which species of bird it is. So, birds, for their color, the male bird and the female bird are usually not the same color of the same species. So one of the things is a cardinal. The cardinal was written about in your book. So a cardinal, the male cardinal is red. Oh, bright red, beautiful. And the female cardinal is kind of brown. Yeah? Not something you're like, whoa, isn't he pretty? She pretty. You're like, yeah, okay. One of the theories of why that is that the female cardinal needs to be able to sit on her eggs in a nest in order for them to hatch and be healthy. So if she is a dull color, she will blend in more with her background. So she has camouflaged, okay? So she will blend in with her background and she won't be all pretty and beautiful and all the predators go, look, there's that cardinal and I bet she's got eggs, okay? And so that is one of the reasons. So not only do you need to know the color of your bird, you need to know the color of the male species of that bird and the female species of that bird in order to identify it. Okay, so in addition to color, I'm just running through my notes to make sure I don't miss anything. In addition to color, some birds have markings on their wings. So they might have little zigzag patterns, yeah, like this. They might have like a circle of some sort. They might have some sort of spots, okay? So that's all considered their coloring. So that helps you to identify them with their little spots or designs on their wings. Okay? All right, size. We've already talked about the ostrich being really big. The emu is also very big. And then the hummingbird's really little. We already talked about that. All right. So some, like I told you, some birds have a sound that's different for when they're in trouble or when they're happy, happy, happy. So some birds actually imitate other birds. So a mockingbird can actually make up to 200 different sounds. Not only does a mockingbird imitate other birds' sounds, but they can imitate a dog barking. They can imitate lizards. They can imitate reptiles. They can imitate sounds of mechanical things like a hinge is on the door or a typewriter. I know I heard one time that a mockingbird was sounding like a typewriter. You guys, if you don't know what a typewriter is, go on YouTube and look it up. Typewriter, yeah. A manual typewriter. So mockingbirds are really cool in that they can imitate other sounds, but that would make it really hard to be able to figure out which bird you're listening to. So that's when you would look at size and color as well and go, oh, hey, that's a mockingbird trying to sound like a robin. Okay? All right. Some birds are actually named after the sound that they make. So I've already told you about the chickadee. He says, a chickadee, chickadee. So another one is a bobwhite. Okay? When the bobwhite sings, he sounds like he's saying bobwhite, 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 bobwhite. Okay? So sometimes the birds will actually get their name because of the sounds that they make. Okay? I'm trying to decide if I want to continue or if I want to let you go. Because we're at like 22 minutes. All right, so let's go ahead a little bit further and look at eggs and nests. So different birds lay different kinds of eggs. And they put their nests in different kinds of places. Okay? So sometimes if you look in a nest, you can tell what kind of bird it is, but sometimes you can't because the eggs are very similar. Okay? So some eggs are bigger and smaller, some eggs are different colors, but then sometimes the eggs are basically, you can't really tell a big difference between them. Okay? So eggs of birds are very different than like eggs of reptiles. Reptiles' eggs are like kind of leathery and tough and stuff. And they're very different than the eggs of a fish or an amphibian. Those eggs are jelly-like and they lay them. And a bird's egg is hard. It has a hard shell on it. If you've ever had eggs, eating eggs, chicken, those are chicken eggs. So if you get a chicken egg, let me go get a chicken egg. I'll be right back. Did you miss me? Sorry. I thought about it and okay, so this is a chicken egg as you can see. Yes? Okay. Chicken eggs, like other birds' eggs, have a hard shell on them. They actually also have an air pocket in them so that when the egg drops, it doesn't break. Now, if I dropped it from like here and hit the floor, it's gonna break. But God created it so if it doesn't drop from a super far distance, that it will not break. It protects any little chicks that might be inside of this egg or any baby birds like baby robins or whatever that might be inside a robin egg, for example. Okay? So there is some protection that God created for them. Pretty cool, yep. Put that over there. Okay? As you saw, it's not a leathery and it's not jelly. It's a hard shell. Yes? All right. Let's continue. Birds' eggs are laid in nests. Okay? So remember, a frog's eggs are laid in the water, fish eggs are laid in the water, reptile eggs, they bury them, and birds' eggs, they put in a nest. They usually first build the nest. Now, one time, they can build nests like practically anywhere depending on the kind of bird it is. So one year, when I lived in Maine, we forgot to take our wreath down from the front door, our Christmas wreath. And so we went to go take it down in the spring because there was a lot of snow that year, and so it was kind of hard to get to the front door. We always use the side. So we went to go take it down, but there was a bird's nest in it with eggs already. So we left it alone. And the little birds, they were so cute. They hatched out their eggs. You could hear them tweeting when their mom came to give them food. But it was right on our front door on a wreath. And she just built, they both built it together. They just built their little nest. They had their little eggs. They fed their little babies until the babies flew away. Once the babies flew away, I actually took the nest and washed it all out. And so I have that nest in our classroom for you to see if we go back to school. Okay? So it's pretty cool to see the whole process. Other birds will build their nests in trees. They build their nests in cliffs. On cliffs, they build their nests in little crooks of the rock, like little cracks that are there. They'll build it in the little crevice. Some birds build their nests in rafters of barns, okay, or abandoned houses. Eagles build ginormous nests on top of like poles. They're huge. I mean, it looks like, I'm not sure because I wasn't like all the way up there, but they're so big, they almost look like you could lay down in them. So different birds build their nests in different places. They all usually use like twigs and leaves, and then like they have this like spitty kind of thing, some of them, to like glue it together, okay? And then it just deteriorates because it's leaves. Some of them actually like grab the little mud to put in there. So they all have like different ways of making nests. Their nests are usually hidden, so they hide them in tall grasses or they hide them up in the tree because there are predators that like to eat the eggs. And so they're trying to protect their little babies. And so that's what they do. Some of the eggs are camouflaged. So some of them have speckles on them to kind of blend in. There's a bird that puts their eggs on the beach. And right now I can't remember the species. And they look like little rocks. They look just like all the rocks around them. So that's kind of interesting. It's not like it's like hidden, but since it's camouflaged, it kind of is hidden. Okay, so there's a sassy bird called a cowbird. And what the cowbird does is the cowbird actually never makes its own nest. The cowbird goes to other people's nests and they get rid of 1 or 2 of the eggs out of that nest and they lay their egg in the nest. So pretend he goes and he finds a cardinal's nest and he throws out an egg or 2 of the cardinals and then drops her egg in there. Sorry, her. And then she flies away. That's all she does. She just flies away. And so the cardinal sits on the eggs just like all her other eggs. And that cowbird actually hatches before the other birds. So the mom and the dad, they start feeding that cowbird and they're feeding it. And pretty soon the other cardinals hatch. And the cowbird is bigger than they are, so he kind of gets a lot of the food. And the other baby birds, sometimes they're okay and sometimes they're not okay. So it's really a big problem. Nobody really knows why the cowbird does this. There's a lot of theories. So originally cowbirds would follow the buffalo herds and they would eat all of the insects as the buffalo would run over top of the grass and all these insects come up. Have you ever seen that? Like when they mow at school, they mow the lawn and then you have the egrets that are there eating all of the insects that came up with the mowing of the lawn. It's kind of the same idea. So the buffalo go running along. Yeah, bison. It's not buffalo, it's bison. Go running along and then the cowbirds would come and they would eat. And so some people think because that was their kind of job, they didn't have time to take care of, baby birds in a baby nest or anything like that. So they would just drop their eggs off as they went along. But nobody really knows except God who made them to do that. So, all right. So not only are the nests camouflaged and the eggs camouflaged, but the birds are often camouflaged as well. So there is a bird, let me find his name again. Oh, the brown creeper. So the brown creeper, when they're like hanging out and they feel they're in danger, they actually flatten out their whole body against the tree. So they're like flat on the tree, okay? And because their wings are brown and the tree is brown, they can't be seen. So the predator can't see them. So they lay themselves out flat and then they just don't move. They just stay there and pretend like they're part of the tree. And once the predator goes away, then the bird will go back to doing whatever she or he was doing before the predator came. Okay, pretty cool. There is another bird called, just a second, I gotta find it. Okay, called the ptarmigan. It's actually spelled with a P, is the first letter. So the P is silent. It's a ptarmigan, okay? Again, it starts with a P. And what it does is it actually changes its feather colors based on the season. I thought that was pretty cool. So when it is summertime and springtime, his feathers are all brown. But then when winter comes, the brown feathers fall out, remember, molting, and the white feathers come in and replace it. It's like so cool. So during the winter, he can run around and he kind of blends in with the snow and stuff because he's all white. Okay? So God has created a lot of camouflage things and a lot of ways to protect the birds and the eggs so that they can reproduce and fill the earth with birds. All right. So we actually did not get, oh, so we are actually done with the birds for today. I'm sorry. I'm thinking faster than I'm talking. Please forgive me. So tomorrow we're going to look at mammals. It's going to be our review of mammals. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed the birds and have a great day. And that's all you need to do. Tell me one new thing that you learned today on this video. Okay. I gave you a lot of stuff that wasn't in your book. I want a new thing you learned today. So please submit that to Google Classroom. One new thing you learned today. All right? And I will talk to you later. Bye!